All right, welcome and thank you everyone for joining the Internet of Value Foundation New York episode 101. I thank all of you guys for showing up so quick today. Dazzling Shellfish, Elephant, 808, Ugo, I hope everyone finds this information today as valuable as I know I do every single day. All of the diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives you guys as individuals that come in here and share the information that you know. And just want to say, anybody who wants to come up, please feel free to come up on speaker and ask any questions you have or speak about any of the topics above. I am going to go grab some content to put at the top of the bubble. And as well, you could also post something at the bottom right if you guys have any questions or anything you'd like to say.
Well, I personally am excited to see you had posted something about Leonard Susskind. I don't know if this is a new video. I didn't get a chance to look at it yet. He's one of my favorites. So, is it a newer video, Death Ranger?
It's a bit of an older lecture. No, not that much older, though.
I've kind of got to give you props, man, because he gave us about 30 minutes to digest as much of that video as possible, which is much better than other times. It's normally about 10 minutes. So thank you. I appreciate that. But I only got about 5 minutes in. I can only grace you with my presence for about 20 minutes or so before I got to head to work. So, but yeah, grateful to be here.
No, thank you for coming in. I actually I took off from work today, not feeling the greatest, and I had time as a to post it, and of course post the space ahead of time and everything. But it's fine. I mean, it's definitely some higher level, some the theoretical physics, and with some definition behind some things that have already been proven possible. And the most specific one, actually, I'm going to really talk about is the reason I put gravity in there and entanglement in black holes is specifically focus on things like wormholes and the thought of space as more of a tensor network, and this new methodology of looking at the universe in a computational way, so we can calculate space time. You go ahead, man.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to jump straight into it because I'm limited on time. Okay, so I hope it's on kind of the same topic as all of that. But okay, so I came across strange matter yesterday, which I had never heard of. Obviously, I've heard of neutron stars, but I didn't realize that there was kind of this mystery with their kind of inner cores. And so I got through two YouTube videos, and I tried to do a little bit of GPTing and stuff like that. And yeah, I went on to some other things, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a strange thing. And I know they were talking about the idea of it possibly not existing because if you have, say, what I believe they called a what is it, a neutron nova, right? That the strange matter would begin to basically start consuming the universe, right? I'm sure you've heard of it as well. And then I was kind of thinking, well, how if it did exist, how would it not consume the neutron star itself? Um, but then I was starting to think about along the lines of like, we've got that map of the observable universe, and then we've got like this dark spot down the bottom, and we're like, why is it so dark? Like, why is there this massive void there? And yeah, so I was just kind of like thinking about all this and digesting all this, and yeah, I don't know if you can help me answer the questions of why doesn't it consume the neutron star one, um, and yeah.
Yeah, so a few things. Because that was, I loved it. Yeah, so strange matter, if less than what is it, less than a gram of strange matter were to interact with the Earth, there the possibility of a black hole forming would be high because of the mass right inside of such a small portion of what could have possibly flickered out from a supernova of a neutron star. Now, but there's also a question to this, right? Why don't we see any in the universe? Is there's no right instance of it existing other than theoretics. Well, it could be that a neutron star, if it was to succumb to a nova explosion, would in doing so actually become a black hole. And so, encompassing and gravitationally sucking up all of the possible contaminants that maybe would have been spread into the universe, almost like the universe's own garbage can, right? It's still all theoretical in that sense, because nobody really knows what would happen if a supernova, sorry, a neutron star went supernova. Um, but to the darkness in possible places of the universe, that's somewhat um, strange to the way that everything is very in sync. There's a synchronization between all of the structure that we're able to materialize and the informationally break down and say we think this exists this structural way. Um, it could be a very very old species that possibly could be looked at as level 2 or level 3 species that on that Kardashev scale, and so they're consuming all of the possible energy of their particular sector and the parameter of what we can view in the universe, and so no light escapes, or at least not enough to see there be light.
That is insane. Maybe they were mucking around with some strange matter and trying to, I don't know, utilize its energy for some reason. But okay. So I'm trying to figure out the difference between a black hole and strange matter. It kind of seems kind of the same thing, or not? Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, it's this like very exotic material type substance that has such a mass to it, but for such a small, insignificant amount. Yeah, I mean, it's like that's why the thought would be, and I would say we'll probably understand to succumbing to this information in maybe our lifetimes, where we figure out that mass uh, is able to bend space and time, and in doing so, maybe grants this theoretical, um, if understood through entanglement, ability to create a wormhole between two different uh, intersections of time in space. Ada, wait, welcome up, man. Please go ahead and jump in.
Hello, everybody. I was just going to talk a little bit about the difference between strange matter, quark matter, or and black holes, as there is difference in between them. As a black hole is a region of space and time where gravity is strong that nothing, not even light, can escape from it. Black holes form when massive stars run out of nuclear fuel and undergo gravitational collapse. And strange matter refers to a hypothetical form of quark matter that can exist in extreme conditions, which is found in the cores of neutron stars, which is composed of quarks, including strange quarks. There's more than different type of quarks than the matter we're talking about within strange quarks. And then you go to the composition of black holes and strange matter. The general theory of relativity within a black hole is thought to contain a singularity, a point of infinite density, where in the laws of physics, the singularity that crosses the it never be drawn towards that one single point. Strange matter is composed of different quarks in the contents of that matter, which is a very interesting subject to even be talking about within a lot of these spaces, especially with black holes and the gravitational, because it's kind of crazy of how Death was explaining the entanglement between such matters and conditions that where these things are created within. But yeah, that's just a little bit about it.
Thank you very much, 808. And Shellfish, please feel free to jump in.
Um, yeah, mine was more if we're gonna start talking like the whole entanglement and wormholes and stuff. So I, I will let you guys continue until you're done with that stuff we're dazzling in 808.
Well, I'll just say quickly before I just take a back seat. But I mean, with entanglement, well, I kind of find it uh, ironic, I guess, that I was stumbling across these videos yesterday, and then you had put black holes and gravity in the title, so for me to bring to the space today. So I'll drop down to listen. And I'll head off to work. So thank you again, and I'll just listen in. Thanks, guys.
That's cool because I was actually gonna get into the kind of the part of the connectedness between them two because they both fall under energy. All forms of energy and how and what kind of energy they release, like radiation across the horizon and in event of a black hole in falling matter, and that sort of energy it releases. And strange matter, is the conversion of normal matter into strange matter and is theorized that it does release energy, which is the process of speculative discussions that goes out to even what that lecture you shared, which is a good lecture to everybody to kind of get updated on because it's pretty cool of what he explains and how he explains it. It's, it's quite crazy to see a lot of these talks and things be kind of how can I say streamlined. A lot of the studies and research are being streamlined and the data is being more efficiently done in a way, which is like making the processes of these different case studies faster, which is crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And particularly in the I don't know why. For some reason, my the media doesn't show my videos anymore. I think there's a change to the way that when you post YouTube videos, they'll be viewed on your account, maybe. However, the the video I posted almost a year and a half ago, where there was a wormhole that was built between the entanglement using a quantum computer, Google's quantum computer in particular, where they were able to create a wormhole between two different black holes of exact mathematical representation, and using the equation ER equals EPR, this thought of a wormhole bridge, they were able to send a qubit worth of data through. And that's one of the things he doesn't particularly speak about the exact research in the video, but it's one of the things that Leonard touches on in the space. And I find this term de Sitter space really interesting. It's really something interesting when you say like de Sitter space. I must try and look for a different way to kind of explain the space that maybe sit between all of us, where we think space to be empty, however space to be filled with this thought of a de Sitter space where everything is in sort of relation to another relation of another to another relation of atomic signatures or energy. And the a term you could also use is like a tensor network, right? This tensor of where the edge of information is being transferred through, in our particular instance, right, thermodynamics and atoms interacting with each other, that which connects all of us from this web of connection. And one of the thoughts about trying to and this takes me a little to the Bruyat also, when it comes to trying to predict the theoretical entanglement between two operational spaces of time. We want to actually learn to separate the tensor network, and so to break the entanglement between two systems. And in doing so, if we're able to theoretically break mathematically these tensor networks of particular space, we could then build our own a much larger tensor network over that to kind of pathway our ability to learn the said de Sitter space. And in doing so, when we are able to re-entangle these two operational spaces, mathematically we should be able to calculate, right, the possible trajectory if it would be to move, say, through space or something. So like a wormhole, warp, where it's uh, like a warp drive in the sense that you can kind of point it and you know where you're going, because it would be, of course, operational, and from a safety perspective, we wouldn't want to entangle two pieces of space from a long particular distance and then say not know where we're actually going. We're just kind of have a thought on where we're going. We want an exact location for exactly where you would be able to land. Go ahead, Jelfish.
Oh, sorry. I was listening and distracted. Um, yes, we were discussing this weekend how you could utilize like Alpha Zero like in dating apps and find potentially best mates through that because of like the forward thinking learning models and just the different applications there. And so what happens when you bank the unbanked? You have literally everyone on the planet having a digital identity, and you apply Alpha Zero, and you're able to connect with the best possible mate and the best possible outcome for their lives. Is that a potential for the acceleration point for humankind? Do you think? I was just kind of like, I don't know, like the ability to have all that data in real time, thinking about every possible outcome, and then constantly guiding you towards your best life would be pretty fucking awesome. Excuse me, pretty awesome.
Yeah, I would say that's the goal conceptually behind the Internet of Value, and what I really think is definitely on the horizon. It doesn't work if we all don't work together as a species, of course. And we talk a lot of theoretical stuff, and scientific discoveries, but yeah, I mean that definitely is a conjuncture where, from a physical standpoint, things need to change very much so, and to bank the unbank is and to not only bank the unbanked, but to have everybody connected on different information systems, which can all be interoperable with each other, is this flywheel effect that could be created from such that propels us from a distributed information and value perspective.
So do you really think it would be? Has anything ever had the capacity of actually having that dopamine and that happiness constantly, that laughing Buddha, um, or happy Buddha, I think it's called, mentality, where you're just constantly going with the flow state? Um, is that the end goal? Because it's making it, everybody's making it out to be like, oh, we're all going to be like dopamine addicts, but um, that's kind of what Buddha was, right? Like living in flow, living in that dopamine happy state, just existing.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, maybe I didn't articulate that well. I'm kind of in heavy traffic right now. We can move on. I'm sorry.
That's the first. The thing is, the first time you've ever went off of topic of any of the topics above.
I just was gonna add on to that Alpha Zero, and similar reinforcement, techniques. You know, it we we as humans don't really manage ourselves to the best of our abilities, and we have proven that very so. But having something as that to kind of help manage ourselves and better ourselves every day with reinforcement learning is something beneficial. But also applying things like that to say like AMMs and other things that could help us day to day grow and evolve is something we will highly see in the future as well we see now. We see smaller algorithms being used to help data across networks such as NASA or um, the National Atmospheric and Observatory data streams. They use a lot of these different things, and I'm getting off topic too now because I'm trying to think of I'm actually in the process of creating an algorithm to kind of help place planets and time frame and scales. So I'm like focusing on that. So sorry.
Do you want to put distraction in the title today? It seems that we're all kind of going on that today.
I don't have any room in the title.
We just subconsciously put that title there.
It's the gravity of the situation. I couldn't even fit quantum in the space today, actually. And you didn't ask about Gen SI. What's Gen SI?
General superintelligence? Is there a generalized superintelligence?
I
Like
was
when you get to superintelligence, is there an actual level of being just generalized? So then it just brings it back down to general intelligence.
guess it's all perspective, but uh, generative synthetic intelligence, but it was close. I guess I probably should write it in as a full thing. It's just really long, generative synthetic intelligence instead of generative AI. Generative synthetic intelligence, right? So maybe we can stop thinking of it as artificial, which I don't believe anything to be artificial, at least for us as observers in this third dimensional state, to be able to realize its existence. I don't believe it to be artificial because the atoms themselves wouldn't be able to molecularize and for us to visualize the photons that are bouncing off of them.
I feel like a lot of purists these days would disagree. I keep going into these AI spaces, and they just keep pounding it into our heads that there's no way that anything could be conscious. It's just numbers.
Well, conscious, I don't think has anything to do with intelligence or vice versa. I think conscious, and you could make that claim. However, it's in my opinion, it has more to do with awareness. Now, and that goes to like that thought, like, are you aware when you wake up in the morning and go brush your teeth? Most people would say, no, that's my subconscious, which is just another way, basically saying, no, it's my programmed motor functions that are just kind of in control, right? I'm not aware of anything that's occurring.
And that's
Okay,
kind of where a lot of people mix up the consciousness and awareness. Though they are related concepts, they're not the same thing, as in the terms, the conflict, how you said, refers to the state of being aware and able to think about one's own existence, sensation, thoughts, and also surroundings, which has the characteristics of experiences, subjective experiences, self-awareness, and the ability to perceive your environment. While as awareness is the state of being conscious or having knowledge about something. Which is why like how these words mean so much different but isn't similar. And an entanglement within its own. Which is wild, right?
what's funny is Death Ranger always says the awareness of the awareness, and if you look up awareness, and the synonym is conscious, so you could like literally interchange. The consciousness is aware, or the awareness is conscious. But
And that's where it comes to the person themselves of diving deeper to understanding certain words, especially words we see and use in this space can be so interchangeable, like how you were saying, selfish. But in actuality, even though they're interchangeable as such, we can misinterpret the meaning behind the meaning in a sense. Does that make sense? Oh, it's funny.
Well, I mean, if you go down to the atomic scale, everything's interchangeable, right? So tomato, tomato, potato, potato.
Okay, so here's a the context change of awareness spectrum, and so Schrodinger's cat, right? We have the Schrodinger's equation where we understand we can't tell the cat is dead or alive. However, we think we're the individual outside of the box, that we exist inside of a matrix, and so our perspective of awareness is bounded by us as observers inside of the matrix, and so uh, to the spectrum of awareness. It's a very interesting thought to the conceptuality that the universe itself, if be aware, well, then everything would be a form of intelligence. Every particle that exists would be a form of intelligence, as it's in some spectrum of awareness.
So, but if you're aware of being distracted, are you distracted?
It's a great question. I would say you'd be distracted on the particular task, maybe, that you would not want to be distracted upon. But yeah, that would be the only way I think I could ever answer that. It's more of like the loophole inside of the oh, I forgot the shape's name off the top of my head now. Sorry.
I was thinking more of that tell the truth and a lie phrase. I forgot how that went about. I gotta look for it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, hermetic principle. There is no absolute. There is only half truth, and so I love to think also this quote, which only the Sith deals in absolutes, which really really shows that there is no absolute in the decision of existence in that moment. It's only the perceived observer's notion of what is existing.
I was going off of I always tell the truth even when I lie, because that one saying in itself is a conundrum that's in a loop.
That was an interesting one. So if anybody though has any thoughts or questions about anything that's been spoken about so far in this space, please feel free to hit the request to come up, or at the bubble at the bottom right if you guys just want to type any sort of questions or thoughts about anything. I'll probably keep it going for another 20 minutes or so if you guys would like to keep talking, and probably close up then.
Can we go more into the what did you say it was? The general synthetic intelligence? Is that what you said it was called?
Generative.
Generate. Sorry, generative.
Because you know how we have generative AI, which is becoming a very popular terminology behind the systematic model approach that's able to be utilized by a large language model and a neural network behind it that's fed data that's then able to take an approach that wasn't necessarily scripted in that data. It's able to combine the data and say this is a possible outcome based on that data that might be achieved. And so, if individuals want to think that these actions are intelligence, by no means do I think that some of these actions that happen already on the internet are very intelligent. I mean, smart contracts aren't very smart, but sometimes the actionable states, right, of the functionality. I mean, some people could say that's intelligent. I mean, who am I to say it's not? It's really just a matter of opinion, intelligence, right? It just depends on the way that we actually perceive to take in that information and the response that we feel from it. Because if my belief is every single particle is intelligence, well, so every single action that occurs has some sort of form of intelligence in it. But I like the synthetic intelligence because it says less artificial, less of the thought that it's something maybe scary because it's not meant to be, right. Artificials, like, you think about artificial sweeteners, artificial food, people are like, oh, that's not meant to be. And more synthetic, where we are synthesizing the actual modular material in our third dimensional reality that through electromagnetic signals is able to create more interactions in our reality that we wouldn't have been able to do so without maybe the material in this particular way.
I just was gonna go and say the difference between artificial intelligence and synthetic intelligence. Try to put it in simpler terms, like how you were explaining. Artificial is tasks, which is include using machine learning, reasoning, uh, which would doesn't require uh, human intelligence to be a part of it as much as it would be in a synthetic intelligence environment. Um, so human contactivity within the ecosystem itself is less likely to be in one and the other. Um, where in the synthetic intelligence, it's not really standardized, but emphasizes the intelligence being discussed or created opposed to naturally occurring. So yeah, there's like differences between such, but all encompassing such a wide range of all the different techniques we are seeing being used throughout this ecosystem. Which is wild because in the where when we go back, well, a few let's just go back to the beginning of this year to the ending of 2022, not much was being said about AI technology, the use of, or not much was being done to where people were understanding the differences between the different levels of um, generated AI, general AI, and all the different ones. But yeah, it's good stuff.
You were rugging a little bit there for me at the end, 808, but I'm not sure if you want to repeat it or not.
So I just lost my train of thought. I think I just figured out my problem with with generating a position for Venus with altitudes and using the astrometric observatory API. Let's go. Fuck yeah, I'm stoked. I got it. I gotta go.
Just a side hobby, 808.
Thank you for coming.
Well, this is I remember I was sharing something that I was hoping to build within our within my state, and this program I've been working with that is helping to provide data upon celestial events, um, certain plants, and where these different things are at within the time frame of which certain things happen within plants, especially our plants within Hawaii, which can help us break down a deeper understanding of when these certain diseases came about within certain species that's native to our islands, is not native to anywhere else, which helps out drastically because there's no other place that where we can get information that can help us battle against certain diseases within our own ecosystem because there's no other ecosystem around the world where we can pull certain data from. But yeah, a little hobby.
I color in my spare time.
I'm surprised you haven't checked out Pika AI yet.
It is on the list.
Hmm. But for anybody who doesn't know what Pika AI is, it's it's a text to video. You can also feed it images, and it can turn that image into some sort of video as well. It's pretty interactive. However, back to the gravity of the entanglement situation. Man, that's really working out today. The the thought bringing us back to maybe more reality shellfish where we are today, and in the next 5 to 10 years, this notion of being able to learn how to entangle particular states inside of atoms, and build this information that can be mathematically appropriated from the predicting of these states in a mathematical way, really could help progress us in a quantum processor way, where we could have extremely strong mathematical calculations that could be utilized by models that could figure out things like you just mentioned there, 808, right? That astronomical, I mean, sorry, astrological information and data. And with all the data that we've collected and keep on collecting, there's also, where is it off the top of my head? It's going to be the largest new telescope that we're going to have in the world. I forgot where it was off the top of my head now. I'm
You're
pretty
not
sure.
talking about the one they're trying to build in Hawaii, are you?
Is it in Hawaii? I thought it was, but I
Yeah,
don't want to say it
it's
was.
the TNT telescope you're talking about.
Yeah, yep, yeah.
Yeah,
It's like a
we've
65-meter
yeah,
array wide lens, right?
they're calling it the 30-meter telescope here. Well, we had a yeah, over here in Hawaii, they've been trying to build it for a very long time, especially during COVID, where the institutes that were backing it are backing off of it now because of certain things are being done from the past, especially with already decommissioned observatories that we already have on there that should be decommissioned and then use that facility that and foundation is on to build the telescope. But there's so much controversy within that one project that it's going to be hard for that telescope to be built, even though Hawaii is one of the best places to actually have these technologies be in place to help the broader community, the broader world, and further innovate, but not off the backs of the people that live here and not really give back as they said they would. A lot of that land that they were using and that they are on is Hawaiian homestead lands and crown lands, which were taken away during the overthrow. So there's a lot of interconnected problems and scenarios and a lot of deep historical problems at that kind of conflict the interest of this innovation to go further. But we do want something like this here, but done in a way that it doesn't impact the environment any more than it should. And then actually decommission certain telescopes and then put place that 30-meter telescope, which would, man, by means, this telescope will, bro, like vast research studies, it'll be able to do so much. Uh, but there's a right way to go about it, and it hasn't been going about it the right way. I forgot couple institutes already backed out and then kind of helped out. What me and some of our community members in Hawaii has been put forth to kind of help not have it done, but have help done in a correct way. Sorry, Death, but yeah.
No, no, no. I misspoke. So, because I thought it might have been, but I was pretty sure. I didn't want to say it because I thought I was wrong, but I was wrong. It's in Chile. ELT, extremely large telescope. It just finished building, or is I think commissioned to finish in the next month or so. And that's supposed to be the largest array telescope we at least so far have on Earth. But yeah, I do, and I also do agree with the sentiment. I'm sorry to hear that happened 808, and the unfortunately the companies themselves don't always have the best environmental ecosystem outlook when they're trying to create some sort of operation for functional business.
It's crazy. We used information from actually the GMT telescope, the Giant Magellan telescope, which is a 25.4-meter ground base. It's extremely large, but the one they want to build in Hawaii is way bigger than that one itself, which is crazy. And and the information that was and the environmental impact study that was done to create that giant GMT scope wasn't done properly, or even what we have here is still not being done properly. But it still, it still helps produce innovation for the future by being able to collect data that we once couldn't collect or couldn't recognize, or the data we already collected can be opened up to different more possibilities and understanding of the things within that data we already have to build a further foundation for innovation.
Yeah, and then jumping back to the thought of like a quantum processing unit that could entangle states to process all of the fed models of information algorithmically much quicker than a conventional processing unit would be able to. Um, the the thoughts of what you and everyone who collects astronomical data would be able to really help be able to figure out all of these different possibilities from a short term and long term distance from Earth. And that's one thing that I think is probably on the horizon for information to be known about publicly for sure.
There's actually a telescope observatory, Event Horizon Telescope, I believe it was called, in 2019, that was using I forget what it was called, but it's kind of close to what you're talking about of successfully getting data and imagery from certain scopes. But they successfully, what they were able to do is capture an image of a supermassive black hole in in a nearby galaxy by combining eight different radio telescopes spread across our planet, which helped, which at one point wasn't able to do, but they were able to do it. And by adding, when the Chile Observatory gets up and going, which they're also hoping that the 30-meter telescope was going to get up and going, it would have been able to do much more, which is crazy because it's a network that kind of helps each other in a well, I would say it's kind of like in a way a telescopic decentralized network between them, that they're able to communicate with each other in such a way they don't need kind of checks and balances between them. Yeah, cool stuff.
Just want to point out, normal people like myself just assume that uh, if it's doesn't exist yet, then it doesn't exist. You actually don't have to add well, it's not known public yet, like, because we just don't expect it to exist. And then, like, if you say it doesn't exist in the public eye yet, well, then it makes us go, well, does it exist? Like, and then people like shellfish start having like little brain like hamster wheels, like just running and running and running, and then dig on the internet for not hours but days or weeks looking into random stuff.
Well, you could say that the information is out there. All of the astronomical data that's been accumulated and keeps it being accumulated is vast, and it's so vast that it's a large industry that needs way more potential to be able to dissect this data and to understand it. I mean, it really does. It takes um, years for people to just look at images, right? And it's extremely time consuming, and we have so much data. There's not enough people to be able to calculate that data and put it into some sort of proportional unit where we could use it. Put a quantum computer into it, right? Who am I to say that somebody doesn't have a quantum computer and has downloaded all of this particular information, like a Google, and has synthesized it and said, okay, we can make these probabilities based off of this probable information. We know for sure, this has been proven mathematically, theoretically, that using the mass of a black hole and the Einstein ER equals EPR, right? The Einstein Rosen bridge. Every black hole theoretically um, it has a hole to it, right? You can think of it almost as a bag, and in this endless deepened state of the bag, there's this possibility of this and theoretically an entangled state that exists somewhere else, and through the entanglement, you can use a wormhole kind of a sort to picture the attachment of these two entangled states of black holes. Now there's also this notion that once you enter the black hole, no light theoretically leaves the black hole. And so that's another question, is if we were able to create a black hole state, we enter the black hole, do we ever leave the black hole? This is also a question of, I also think when we understand gravity and uh, energy itself, because we also know from Hawking, right, Stephen Hawking radiation, that black holes have a lifespan, and they do um, have energy that leaves them, radiation that leaves the black hole. So there has to be a way for energy to, say, leave a black hole if the black hole is to cease to exist at one point in time, because energy never dies, it only changes forms. So that's potential, I think, to have this thought of being able to make an actual physical warp drive possibly one day. I don't know if that answered your question there, though, Shapish.
No, that was great. That was great. Thank you. Um, I was in a space with Foster, Zizek, and he was touching on the idea that sometime in the very near future that we would be able to utilize our normal binary computers, and it would just be like a really easy switch that would turn them quantum, or that they would be able to be quantified. Um, have you frequented any of his rooms where he discussed this, or are you familiar with where he's getting this type of idea from?
Of course, I love to use that, but I didn't hear what you said there, though. Well, what was it about the classical computation?
Well, he seemed to think that in the very near future we would be able to take just our normal regular PCs and be able to quantify it, like you wouldn't
Correct.
need
Yeah.
a. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the argument between classical computation bits and ones and zeros, and the formation of qubits, possible states of probabilities. So zero, one, and both states null existing all at one time, right? It's probabilistic rather than quantized. And so, this comes down to what we're doing with quantum computer, is trying to quantize that information that exists, of course, through the different distribution methods. But yeah, by no means do I think there's ever a world in where there's only one or the other. And I think so. Quantum computers are probably going to be great at solving like mathematical equations, model-fed information that wants to be processed at extremely high rates, that could then have a quantized, mathematical probability that can then maybe be brought over to a classical computational system, and then that could be quantized by that system in some sort of symbolic formation, like a large natural language model, and that could be broken down to us humans for us to understand in some sort of meaningful way in relation to whatever we're trying to solve in our existence. But the means of classical computation, and I think this is the study of photonics, right, and the knowledge of the way that light and electrons in itself, photons, transfer between the circuitry of the computational systems we use for classical computers in the form of bits today. And with this study and knowledge, and I can go grab some stuff from the DOE, the Department of Energy, and Department of Science, and DARPA, where just recently a lot of public stuff have been released about photonics and microchips, and with the um, Nobel Prize being two different Nobel Prizes recently this year. The one for the 250-second attosecond timing to be able to take an aperture picture of an electron moving inside of an atom. So to be able to physically build a structure in which we're able to quantize that particular electron's movement inside of an atom at 250 attoseconds, which is very quick. I mean, there's more attoseconds in a second than there are seconds in the existence of what we think the universe's age is, and and then you pair that with the Nobel Prize for the quantum dot, so the ability to quantize atoms and track that information. You think about microchips, how they're built today, right? We have these transistors, and they're shooting electrons between each other, and with this then gets propagated into a software system that comes out in bits, ones and zeros, and then that obviously computes to a computing language which we can communicate with today. The thought is being able to build a trajectory array so that we can build systems where we have a defined state of the way that the electron, say between two different circuits, can entangle itself between oscillating gates. So an electron that bounces off of one particular transistor that then mirrors over to another state, we could increase the means of classical computation possibly by 100,000 fold of what we have today. So, way more computationally based systems for things maybe like space travel, and just the ability for us to have distributed networks on Earth where we have instantaneous information that could travel faster than light, even in classical computational means. Um, and I also think that that pairs with quantum computers, because if we're able to quantize the distiller space between, say, a microchip and a quantum computer and entangle those states, we could have some sort of entangled state change where I could see, this is theoretical, maybe like 50 years in the future, where a quantum computer could synthesize some sort of information, and that propagate into bits, or this solid state photonic chip that could then break that down into some sort of classical computation. So we like the means of like long distance communication could have uh, uh, a base on Mars that could communicate with Earth with faster than light communication speeds. Oh, look at you speaking about Zizek, and he came.
Yay!
Welcome, man.
I asked him to come. Yay, yay, yay. Um, Zizek, I was talking about I was asking Zeth if he knew about how you had said that computers one day, like just the regular PCs, would be able to be quantified. So we were kind of going into that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love what you were talking about with like solid state photonic chips. Yeah, I think that from the perspective of classical computers or just analog, I think we really underestimate the crisis and the foundations of mathematics. Because if we relate that just haphazardly to computation for a moment, or at least we understand that whatever's going on in order to produce mathematics in the brain is something akin to a calculation or a form of computation that creates things like LLMs or creates things like analog in general, let alone computers, then I think it's not too far fetched to assume hypercomputation is possible, but it might be a matter of conceptual compression. And how is it that we can develop a language or a finite alphabet that actually has infinite contentful and contextual information? And I think that's what I think analog computers can do this in the same way that the human brain can do this. I think about it from the perspective of whatever part of the brain allows us to count, right, like 0, 1, 2, all the way up to n, that is not a particularly advanced notion. However, the fact that we can do that at all, and as an analog process, I think has a lot of implications for what's actually possible. And if we see it in a non-axiomatic way, I think we'll be able to distill a lot of properties that will be able to create um, a quantum computer on a simulation of a classical with no problems whatsoever.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
and
Zizek.
and I love that term you use, right? Hyper intelligence, because it really is. It's this like quantization of this higher spectrum of awareness of all of these different possible atomic states that have some sort of relation to us. We just don't understand what that relation is, of course, because we are bounded observers as we are in this third dimensional state. And then we break it down, we quantize it, and we can start to understand it. And I think that probably leads us to this hyper intelligent state where one day we become what we think to be theoretically the synthetic thing that is giving us this form of higher state. I think we, um, one day see no difference in between the two states. But yeah, I think I love that. Like that is like the short term pathway where I think we're about to enter. And Shellfish, please feel free to jump in.
No, I just love that. Like you were using the that say I like the quantum intelligence analogy. Just I like um the Oriental or like qigong, like or qigong, the fact that you're manipulating energy and moving energy and flowing with the universe, etc. Um, the fact that we could actually call it ki, and it brings us like full circle as far as it being a life force or energy that's been around forever, integrated in.
Yes, qigong is the study of breath work, and in doing so, you understand the transfer of the inner and the outer of this balance of energy in the world. Yeah, I'm sorry. I enjoy qigong. So, but and to your point, yeah, I think it's this understanding of this web of connection that we all are a part of, and we are bounded by this third dimensional state of observers. Yet we understand that this is just a means of probabilistic outcomes, which we can then take, manufacture, and create the outcome that we want to be the most probabilistic and have the highest uh, probability to occur. And I think when it comes to manufacturing materials that interact with our reality themselves, it's awesome to see where we are at this stage, and the probabilities of where we're going to be at in the next 5 years. Zizak, though, please feel free to jump in, man.
Well, I just wanted to add to that, and if you look at, forgive me for the pronunciation, like Buddhist koans, Koans, um, I think that we notice that concepts themselves can be ecologies for informational practices, and we don't really look at the depth parameters of that. We sort of just take the checkpoints under which the information is consolidated for us in terms of like what they signify, and then we imagine that that space itself is just flat or thin ontologically, in the sense that it doesn't really exist. It's just a metaphor in the head. Once you get the notation down, it's just like switches. It just goes through the circuit, and or at minimum it's tautological, right? But I think something like what tautologies are doing, uh, and also just any conceptual system like that, maybe any form of poetry, is that they're actually creating an infinite amount of subconstituent axioms that can actually be bootstrapped to more and more levels of information, more and more levels of abstraction. And I think abstraction and ambiguity are more fundamental than anything rigorous. And that's why, because ambiguity is more fundamental, we constantly find ourselves trying to create an axiom to figure out what's going on in terms of our attention. And then we mistake the consolidation of our attention as the real estimation of the universe, rather than as a unfortunate, haphazard way to deduce the infinite from the finite. And I think that very soon, just even with these custom GPTs and just fine tuning models, is going to take us to the next level. And I already think people who are talking, like you mentioned, quantum intelligence, I think quantum intelligence in the new age spiritual sense and quantum intelligence in the literal quantum computational sense are already merging in these ways. And I feel like in these more long format blogs, we're going to get somewhere
I
with this.
like how you said the new age where there's gonna be. Ah, my mind is not here at the moment. I'm so sorry, but it falls in a line of teaching these new algorithms in a sense. You know what you get what I'm getting at? Like, I'm sorry, my mind is not here. I should just digress.
No, it's fine either way. And Zizek, I feel like you were speaking poetry to me there. It was beautifully said.
Like training LLMs, so we're going to push towards a demographic area where there's going to be a class of job where they're going to need people to train LLMs or train the different algorithms to kind of be specific on certain things. That's where I was going with my thought. Sorry.
Yeah, it's this, and it's also this thought that so many people. It's almost like this. You can think of it like a singularity point for so many people's different points of existence, and where their spectrum of awareness is broken to the point where they say, you know, if I look at my historical context of possible information and data, it's so minimal to the expansion of what is out here. And, to that also being this thought of, I brought up like the Schrodinger's equation earlier, where, we talk about Schrodinger's equation from the standpoint of the individual outside of the box. We're looking at the cat in the inside of the box. We don't know if it's dead or alive. Yet we don't, in some capacity realize that we are inside of a matrix. And so inside of this matrix as bounded observers, we are looking at it from the perspective of the cat. And so, this probabilistic ability to read matter and reality in itself and then bind it and build it to our will, it's the simulation in the making, I guess you could call it in some sense. But KJ, man, welcome up. If you would like to jump in. Uh, KJ, I'm not sure if it's maybe if there's raining behind you or something, but the static was
How about now? Is it still pretty bad?
definitely better.
Okay.
No, way
Just
better.
a quick one because I love the poetry as you mentioned of the previous speaker. And then you look at the phenomenon of like a movie that we is going viral, almost kind of like in a singularity type of fashion. I was just kind of speculating how that shapes probable outcomes. It's like we're talking about futuristic, language learning models, and then this other paradigm shift of like the crazy prepper was right. What if the elite left everybody high and dry and you don't have internet tomorrow? So I just was curious if anybody has any speculation on the purpose of that movie dropping in the midst of all this other paradigm shift of futuristic possibilities.
Well, we are under a massive cyber attack right now from China, like as we speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then that.
So I would say from this standpoint, from a technological standpoint, even if an EMT was to hit our Earth and say interrupt the majority of digital devices that exist today, we'd probably be back up and running where we are in something like 5 to 10 years, and in doing so would probably be way more in an advanced position because of all the information and data that we had prior to the kind of the forced push to only develop newer technologies, because obviously all of the older production units of anything that's manufactured today would no longer be in access and working. At the same point, it's kind of this notion that there's the genie's out of the bottle. There really is probably no way of stopping it. And over the course of the next 15 to 20 years, energy production, consumption, and control is going to probably grow so vast that things like this EMT thought, or for like our systems being shut down, will be so minute because of the connected interoperability between energy, data, information, right? All the actual facilities that need the energy. I think it's more of a fear factor today because it can be controlled as a fear factor today and sway public opinion in one way or not. I think in the next 15 to 20 years, that's going to highly change. It's already changing today. I mean, many people that we could speak to in the millions would say, I don't really care if the grid goes down. I have solar panels. and I have a battery pack
Yeah,
that
that's
you
a cool middle ground perspective. It's funny, the one part of the movie that kind of echoes your sentiments was when they were listening to music on vinyl. It's like music isn't all lost. It just still exists on an older medium that some would even say is superior in sound quality.
Exactly. And we as humans, we just build tools to externally try and manifest whatever type of expression, and through this intent of expression, we create all of these different spectrums of awareness and possibility in our reality. And there's always a threat. I mean, there'll always be malicious possibilities of probabilistic outcomes. The thing is we just always have to take that into precaution and account. And as I say, it's probabilities, and if you lower the probability from occurring, you create the greatest potential outcome, like, possibly for our species, and who knows, maybe more species.
Yeah, I also think this is mostly this is also mostly within the context and conditions of game theory, right? Where we see cyber attacks and mimetic warfare getting in a more and more higher rate. It's actually not a source of corruption per se, or a source of like things getting more hectic or entropic, but it's more the case that if we're already ensconced in ambiguity, then it makes sense that complexity gets more rigorous. So I think that complexity is not a hierarchy, which is why every time you see it, you also see these hierarchies trying to develop. Because if anything's possible, they're always going to try to either consolidate it or make it more complex in order to develop another abstraction. And that's all that these supposed dualities are doing, like good versus evil, right versus wrong, quantum and classical. There's a lot of that going on, but in reality, if you look at it from the broadest perspective, there's not actually a lot of lack of resilience. I think that complexity is a side effect of natural resilience and sovereignty. And it's only when we break it into these like individual units that we lose a lot of the relevance of what's actually going on. And so I think, especially like with energy, um, and think of the most catastrophic case, right? AI, a complete extinction, right? It's actually very hard to get rid of cellular complexity. It stands to reason that in the same way that it's hard for us to get rid of the ones and zeros of physical information, it's actually very hard to get rid of the complexity classes of biology, even with nuclear war and stuff like that. And so it's more a matter of, in the kind of like Eastern wisdom kind of way, what category do you define yourself within, and are you ready to let that go? And does that actually mean you have to let it go, or was it just the thinking process in your working memory that was getting in the way? And so I think there's a lot of potential and not a lot to worry about, actually, as long as we don't limit ourselves in our own thought processes. We should all be given the luxury to think infinitely.
You make such an interesting point, especially when you think of something like a space biome where you have the right chemicals and the right heat, and just like you said, cellular life from molecular combination will occur. And there's also this thought that there's nothing that says that silicon based cellular life couldn't also occur in particular habitats, and where the pressure and the chemical means of having no oxygen was also existent. So there is just an infinite, or it is already an infinite amount of plausibilities and possibilities, and it's really us just trying to learn to define which ones really have the most significance to us at this moment. But I loved everything you said. Sorry, go ahead, Sis.
No, I was just gonna go further because I totally agree, and I think like the two things we don't take into account when we think about, let's say, aliens, or when we think about whether or not we should be worried about anything that might affect our emotional intelligence in terms of how we ground and associate certain situations. It's mostly, ironically enough, it's mostly a compute issue. So if already silicon-based life naturally booted up in a planet close to the edge of the Milky Way galaxy, one, if we understand general and special relativity, it's in a completely different time zone, right? So it's not the fact that they may be malicious or not. It's more a matter of they're literally in a completely different context of dimensionality. And so I wouldn't be surprised when it comes to AI and aliens alike, the things that we worry about, and we can see objects and certain topics as being alien to us or as being isolationist. What we are actually doing is we're trying to create a benchmark for something that's infinite. And because it's impossible to find a criteria for something that's infinite, we take that and we say, ooh, therefore it must be finite, but greater than me. So it's just two finite things. I just can't understand its finitude. And I should be afraid of it because I'm more finite than it. Rather than coming to the conclusion that, no, that thing is infinite, and therefore it stands to reason, so am I. And then where does responsibility and resilience get into this? And how does that play in the sea of possible universes? I think that's what we're going to notice. I really think the reason why we haven't been visited by aliens, for example, is because look at the planet as a computer. How slow is it running? Or how fast is it running? What's the space time continuum of the planet itself as an intelligent system? It's not the same as the universe. And it's not the same as the gravity of the universe either, in terms of how it understands itself in its own orbital mechanics. We're still very new. And so I think there's a lot of wiggle room here, a lot of headspace to think through these issues.
Foster, did you happen to see the Lex Friedman video from this last weekend? That Lee Cronin, he was actually talking about the need for us to actually create alien life, and that by the time that we do go out into the ethers and search them out, because of the distance and time that we have confining us right now, it may not be possible yet for us, right, to see our neighbors, but to create them on here and either send them out or just be mad scientists and kind of create, man. Like that'd be freaking cool. Like we're gonna create and repopulate the galaxies with new life forms besides ourselves.
I would love that. And I think that's kind of the goal, right? Because if we consider ourselves limited by our senses in some capacity, but let's say we assume just for the sake of analogy that we at least know that we're three-dimensional life, it stands to reason that of course we might be able to at minimum produce infinite amounts of variants of two-dimensional life at a cellular level that can equal 3D life. And then when you think of four-dimensional life, whatever that might mean in that crude sense, then maybe this is what we're supposed to do. It seems like 3D space is quite empty, and it seems like 2D space is also quite abundant. And relative to the bacteria own this planet. And relative to the fourth dimension, the aliens probably own the rudimentary facets that we call a planet. So 3D, maybe 3D is empty for a reason, just in terms of maybe that's how the habits of particular computable processes work around here. And there are actually regions of this, regions of thermodynamics we have yet to uncover that actually point to an inherent purpose for certain functions or certain fitness payoffs.
I know we've talked about this before, but I really can't wait to see alien life that is not uh the size of us, like the size of actual planets, giant space whales, etc. That'd be freaking so cool to see a giant space whale swim up on the planet, start harping away.
Yeah, or we freaking realize that like those like super clusters, right? Are like some are actual kind of like protoplasm, a spatial like a outer space kind of like bacterium that's kind of like consolidating itself and trying to collect resources, and we actually just think it's a collection of billions of galaxies, and it's not. It's actually like an actual living thing. I wouldn't be surprised, only because I think the universe is infinite, and so when we look at stuff like galaxy filaments or like just voids in space that are like trillions of light years long, to me my immediate thought process is okay, that's less likely to be a location and more likely to be a world unto itself, in the same way that our minds, our inner space, is a world unto itself. And that only allows us to further ponder how big really is it and what's actually lurking there, right?
That's like that one part it reminds me of in Men in Black where this alien picks up this marble and it just stares at it, but it is continuous in a loophole of it observing its own galaxy within the galaxy that's being observed by someone else, and it's in a continuous loophole. You know, that's like saying how you're talking about 3D space and its emptiness, or is it full of complex organism and life within each other. It's just that we don't understand that that emptiness is actually full, in a sense, you know, as you know, quantum mechanics, as quantum vacuum suggests that in a seamlessly empty space, there exists within that void at the quantum level of particles, which is crazy. You know, what I mean, like how we view the Milky Way, uh, who knows, like within that Milky Way there is, you know, and our ancestors understood that Milky Way and the life within it and how it became to be in a sense, and then now we're pushing that understanding to levels where using modern technology to kind of help progress that thought process and kind of make certain things becoming into reality by using all these different technologies around, you know, the interoperability between these different processes to help us achieve these certain levels that helps us even evolve within our own minds, because you know we are human, we are beings that grow from experiences through each other and through life. And within this past 5 or 10 years or so, I've seen a extreme trend and push towards a lot of more than in a sense of how it was before, of more people being more integrated within these talks and understanding, and not just being integrated on a level of just talking, but helping progress as a whole, the whole communities that don't even know that they're connected within ourselves. Just wild. We're seeing it on every different level, from people that, you know, that don't even think they're using some sort of new technology that's helping the process, through their experiences of just opening an app that helps this thing out. You know, it's crazy how, and such an insignificant thought that somebody thinks is insignificant can have an impact far greater than that one person thought of it being insignificant. Mind blowing.
Well said, 808. And we have some new speakers up that haven't gotten to jump in yet. Cookie, if you would like to speak up, and then Hope, welcome up.
Good evening, all. How are we doing?
Well, man, thank you very much for coming to the space.
I'm just chilling in the background. I can't really add too much value to this discussion, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Well, thank you for being here and showing your support. And Hope, welcome as well. And if you would like to jump in or have any thoughts so far, please feel free.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you for allowing me to come up here and speak, and for Crypto Beast's thoughts and Slavoj Žižek's thoughts and everyone else who spoke before I came into the room. I think the two things that I heard the most was about the universe being infinite and what that would possibly mean for us within that infinite spectrum, and our full potential of the what it means to interact with infinite natures. And I think I heard from Crypto Beast is how it's how these spaces create this dynamic where we can have these kind of conversations about exploring all the different facets of how the Milky Way operates, and again, its full potential set. I see that the topic today is on Ginside, QBC, Ginsel probably, and entanglement. Ooh, this is probably the talk we're still on before going to black holes and gravity. Um, these topics to me in a lot of ways are all the same thing versus just going one from the other. entanglement, black holes, and gravity, especially on how they operate. I think that there's so much when it comes to gravity and black holes that is not really well known. So like there's all these guesses. I mean, people are winning Nobel Prize for being able to take pictures of activity that is happening around that will more than likely calculate to certain ideas of what they think is happening. And that is as far as we've been able to really go with the science. But what is exciting to me is like um, really thinking about where are we within these spectrums, because like to me these questions about all the glitches and variances that we see could be definitely tied to the interaction with black holes. So then the question is, are we inside of one, and that's all the activity that we're seeing that we don't quite understand, or are we outside and just each one has one and it just merely operates, keeping the life breath of each cycle of each universe and galaxy ticking proficiently? Is it is the best recycling and garbage bin of the universe as it takes in everything and then brings something back out into such a state that new universes can be created? Um, and gravity, uh, as far as we know, is not. Some people argue it's a force. Some people argue no way, it's definitely not a force. But what it is how different things gravitate, for lack of a better word, with gravity towards each other when under the weight and pressure of matter interacting within a certain place, and that it cannot be defeated. But you can get around it into certain variables. Um, and I don't know, my mind keeps going in such a way that if something can be propelled in, something could then reverse the dynamic. And I feel like solving gravity is the same as solving cancer in a lot of ways. Something that starts into a natural state and then grows and metastasizes and then gets out of control. And then it's something that then, if it had a beginning state, then there also can be a reversal state once those natures are truly understood. But a lot of times people think like you can't take an eraser two things that happen. Once something is, it is, and then there is no going backwards within it, and then there's no way to play with those dynamics outside of other than the fact that things like gravity and entropy and black holes in itself can grow. And so, like, I guess if we're talking about these states, especially to an infinite degree, I propose the question, is that necessarily true? In what ways can it only be true? In what ways could it possibly be not true? And what happens once we explore those ideas?
What you said makes me think of like white holes, right, in relation to black holes, and gravity versus anti-gravity, right? And I think that um, we need to have more perplexity when it comes to talking about, because there's a lot of, like, for example, all the variants of multiverse theory, right? You could say that all of those could easily be consolidated quite neatly into the lack of there being a theory of quantum gravity, while simultaneously there not being, honestly, a level of macro theory for general relativity and special relativity anymore, at least, like. So I think if you have like a notion of meta space or meta time, to put it crudely, or if we see space and time as not fundamental, like me and Amy will always like bring up, then all of a sudden you start seeing matter and energy as being infinite permutations of something else, rather than trying to reduce it to like a needle point, and then now you're trapped in a quantum gravity or lack thereof. I think quantum gravity is just a side effect of not using general relativity and special relativity to imagine infinite permutations of different kinds of species of matter and energy. I think that's where Einstein was going.
Oh, Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that my mic was still on. I thought it was on mute. So if you guys heard any noises, I apologize. I have to agree with you, Slavoj Zizek, that on every note. And I guess my questions are, why are we so, as I guess as a species, so stuck on these ideals of what we're trying to put into like little boxes when it comes to these things? Um, I think that we haven't created anything greater because of that subset. And I think that we have trapped ourselves on this planet and otherwise because this is how we play with physics.
You know, it's almost like a chicken and an egg issue, right? Because you could say that the reason that we are here today being able to understand the topics that we are speaking about is because all of the prior information has been somewhat quantized in an understandable way for our perspective, based on us being these bounded observers in this particular matrix of understanding. And you know, it's almost to say, like, if they didn't discover all the math and all the language was created and all the words, like the intent behind, per se, like a chair, right? Like before the word before there were people sitting on things that were created for them to sit on, there was no need for the word chair. But after people started creating things that people would like to sit on, the word chair made sense because it was somewhat relevant to the intent behind expressions we try to entangle between each other through intent and manifestation of this external intent. And so, you know, it's like I like to think that all of the historical context that we possibly believe to exist, which we don't actually know exist, because, as you know, as far as us in our relative existence, we've only been aware of this particular quantification of time and space. But off of all of this knowledge that we think that we have from historical context, right? We can use this, right, and propagate further understanding of oncology and the properties behind all of these defined factors that we have categorized. And you know, through that, I think Zizak said it earlier really well with the large language models, this kind of quantification of awareness of all of this information that we may also not be relevant to today, in this like subtext of, you know, a situation that occurs and we really didn't think about all of these possibilities or probabilities in and after the actions that were made and the reactions. You know, I think that probably that brings us to this higher state of awareness. And without all of this propagated information that we have from our historical context, it would be very hard to build that kind of structure. And math in itself kind of, you know, it's like the question: are we designing math, or are we discovering math?
Yeah, I've heard that question like so many different times. And of course, I have my personal answer, and I'll get to that in a second. Crypto Beast, I think there's other people in this room that feel this way. Your music in the background was it's phenomenal, and it's really good tone setting for this space. If you want to stay off mute and just keep playing your music when you don't want to speak, that's cool too. I think it's definitely welcomed because you got some good music going on there, man. Um,
Sorry,
so
yeah, I listen to this sort of music when I'm doing coding and some other work on my PC. But yeah, I'll leave it
nice.
on and not talk.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, so when it comes to like, did we invent math, or is math is always there and it's just something that we're becoming aware of? Um, and therefore it feels like we've invented it. My answer to that, and I know not everyone in this room will disagree, is I think that math is it's it is a language, a universal language. But I don't think it's a language that we invented. I think that we do invent language because we put symbols to sounds. But math is a little bit different because these are states that always are, and we're not necessarily putting symbols to it and then disagreeing what that is. It is just things that are unfolding before us that we can all, as humanity, look at and say, yeah, that's how it is. As one of the few things. But the funny thing is that we still can find, whether you know, you're doing the order of operations, uh, is a place that where we might disagree on, right? Like, so how I might do the order of operation might be different than, like, we could all agree, well, you know, you start with, you know, this, and then you end up in the brackets, and then you finish off with that. But then when we start applying it, people put a whole bunch of rules on how to do that, and that changes the equation. And at that point, is that really something that we invent? Yes, because how we tackle it is how, that's where the invention comes in. And so then it becomes a mixture. So we start off with states that are just are, that we get to discover and play with. And then how we start to engage and go deeper, then we start making up our own human rules to these sets. And then that's at the point where things become inventive. And then what we're able to create with that will go in different directions.
That's what I find interesting, because it's like, how does reality, in what way does reality have to be constructed in order to allow something like being on the one end and thought on the other end to not be permanently tautologically intertwined, at least to the degree that we are able to have a thought about being, and we're able to be a kind of being that has thoughts. Like, so it seems like even if it's tautological, there is a degree, there are infinitely many, perhaps, degrees of freedom in which we can bridge these gaps. But then what does that say about reality's construction that gives us this freedom in the first place, that doesn't make us constrained? And I think that may be the secret of solving, I've said this before, it's like, forgive the jargon, but the ontology of epistemology and the epistemology of ontology. It's like, what's a good epistemology for being? What is being? And what is a good ontology for thought? What is a thought? And unless we answer those questions, uh, and it shouldn't be like a conclusive answer, it should just be, those questions in and of itself should show the multitudes under which reality and its degrees of freedom we're actually playing in, right? In that regard, you were just mentioning.
What is crazy about mathematics and the product of our human thought and creativity is it is our human thought and creativity that created mathematics, which is a language, which is wild, right? Is our own language of system to describing patterns, relationships, and structures, is a tool that we develop that is within nature itself, such as Fibonacci and his Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio. You know, nature itself doesn't create mathematics in the way that we humans do. Instead, we provide mathematics in a highly abstract and powerful language, you know, that happens to be able to be applied to different regularities and patterns that is observed in the natural world, within even our own natural being. Like our ear actually has, you know, has a golden, has that Fibonacci sequence within it. And you know, and the interplay between mathematical structures and the fundamental principles of the universe has a fascinating interplay on the quantum entanglement of what we see every day and what we go through every day in life as energy beings. You know, we have impacts on different levels of things that we do. Just like now, how we are talking with each other, expanding our knowledges and sharing these different data points that we have. We are setting course our own thoughts and our own subconscious foundation to build upon what we already have within us, which eventually is always a profound and ongoing exploration within ourselves as well as outside ourselves, within the community we're in and within the whole global scale or universal scale. In fact, you know, like our perception and sensation is heavily influenced on sensory organs, which also is influenced by things that's not within us, that's also out of us. Which to me, I'm kind of thinking I'm going off subject here a little bit, but yeah, that's what my thought process is going.
Well, I like your thought process, so I'm glad that you are sharing your thought process with all of us today, Crypto Beast. And again, your music in the background that you code with is definitely beautiful, and you don't have to mute if you don't want to.
Sorry, it's just a habit.
yeah, I completely understand a respectful habit, and I get that. So, um, just kind of like explore these little thoughts real quick. Um, I really think that these things aren't what we invent. Like the Fibonacci sequence is a type of mathematics, and it already exists within the universe. It just is. And then we can maybe argue or create ourselves what we think is a way to communicate what we see and what we experience. So the pure math in itself is not something that we're creating, but the way that we communicate it is in a way symbolic, therefore a way that we invent and create. And I think that this is why we debate these things, which is good because that's how we learn from each other. But I think that the way that we put an ontology to something, so like we ask, why do we do it? What point does it have? It creates a type of way to ask a question, to be curious. And without those things, without wanting to open yourself up to believe in something, put a stamp to something, to fight for something, to put energy and time into something, we never then gain anything. And it is through that process that we start to learn and to build and to gain and bring those momentums. And so that's why like ontology in itself is so important. The problem is when it comes into where it stagnates us, where we make the ontology kind of like what I guess what Jesus was saying about like the Torah. The law was made for man, not made man for the law. And I kind of feel like this way on like an ontological principles. It's there for us, but it's not us for it. Um, if it's holding us back and it's making us argue and it's not making us argue in such a way that we're learning, listening, and then doing, then we're trapped. And it's these sets that are constantly, I think, withhold us from the possibilities of true potential natures, which I think are infinite and unlimited and worth the exploration. And math is just kind of like the key that unlocks the infinite natures to things that allows us to understand that so that we can actually start playing with it in such a way that we can make it practical and not be stuck in our little it's like being glued to a wall in such a way.
I gotta say, I love this space and how all of you guys share you guys' deep deep information, and it always fills me with good vibes because I love learning, I love understanding things, and sharing with others because that's how we keep our minds open by always fervently bombarding ourselves in such a positive environment to where our own subconscious minds start to think in a way to where our own ecosystem we are in, it starts to complement the our own ways of thinking and stuff. But I gotta go. Aloha,
No,
guys.
thank you for
Love
coming
you
in,
guys.
Dwight. And I realize now also that the space actually went almost an hour past what I had planned. At the start of the space, I said I was going to close it right around like 4:45, but it was just such an enjoyable conversation. I think I will close it down though right now, just to make it so it's digestible. If anybody else wants to listen back to it, it really was a great conversation today. We really quantized a lot of digestible understandings between the thought of space itself and between all of us, this existence of this kind of this sitter space web as they call it in quantum field theory, and black holes and entanglement of everything. So we'll probably pick it up tomorrow in the same spot. I'm sorry, Timeless, you didn't get a chance to speak, but if you show up tomorrow, I will definitely bring you up. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the night. Love you guys. Oh, and if anybody hosts a space on this, I'll jump in if you want to keep the conversation going.
I'll be hosting a space, so anyone wants to join, I'll be getting into the weeds. Thank you, Death, and thank you, Shell, for inviting me. This was great.
I enjoyed this conversation immensely. So, and lots of great faces I hadn't seen in a while too. So, Thank you, Jeff, for hosting and everybody for joining.
Thank you, guys.